I wanted to follow up my last video with another look at Rivian Regen. In the last video, I started at 75% and went down my hill, and we very quickly saw the Regen current limit get limited. So here I'm looking at the old data, and in this video, I repeated that test at 50% state of charge, and I'll get to that in a little bit. We did actually get to go a little bit further. So again, this is the old data from the previous video. And just to review, this Regen current limit started around basically 230 amps, fell to 18. But the significant fall here is when it goes from 200 amps down to 130 amps, and then again down to 75 amps. And so this fall is what you really feel in lack of regen. And again, to review the motor current response to that, and when your foot's off the pedal completely, here's the motor current, 20 amps in for one of the motors. Another thing I added to this, and that's why I bring up the old graph. Again, people were discussing in the forums. I had stator and rotor temperatures. Here's the IGBT temperatures as well from inside the inverter itself. In the same message, it has another motor temp signal. But these IGBTs are saying fairly cool. Nothing is overheating here. And in this case, it's like 25C. So, again, people were theorizing maybe the IGBTs are overheating. This motor temperature, I think, corresponds to the rotor or something like that. It's a little bit warmer in this case. So this is the old one, and again, in a matter of, where do I start going downhill? Right about here. On 261 to 337. So in less than 100 milliseconds, that's not right. In less than 100 seconds, we've lost all our regen. So let's pull up the new graph and compare. Okay, here's the new graph with the new data. And just to quickly review again, here's the pack current, and here is the recharge current limit from the BMS. And just to go through what we see here, again, we do see that degradation of regen, but I'll show you it doesn't go as low, and it takes longer to get there. I also ran one other test during this here for discussion. So again, we'll go back to the pack current here. Now what I did is, knowing this might take a bit longer, I actually turned and drove up the hill a bit from my previous starting point. So I didn't quite floor it here, but I gave it some juice going up. We're over 750 amps. There, I go uphill, I turn around, and so right here you see my pedal going to 0, and you see the negative current. This is when I start going downhill here. So from a timing perspective, 292. And so I'm going downhill, and any place you see the pedal position at 0, and the negative pack current is basically full regen. And right off the bat, you see that I'm getting peaks of 300 amps, actually here, 330 amps. And so that corresponds with, now this again, as I mentioned before, this BMS charge current limit is one of the limitations. There's another limitation on torque and regen. So it won't go as high as this can, but as this goes down, it's going to limit it. And so that's what you see here. You're seeing 330, and then suddenly you only see 320. Okay, not a huge difference. You're not going to notice that, but look here. Suddenly we're down to 200. And so that's where this, we see this big fall again. And we're 400, 300, 240, and here we're down to 200. And so that's what you see here, is that 200 limit now is tighter than whatever the torque or whatever the motor limits are. Now the pack is really limiting it, and we have this 200 limit. But what's significant here is, first of all, it went from whatever that 294 to 414 seconds. So we went 130 seconds before we fell to 200 amp limit. And then we stayed at this 200 amp limit the whole time. So this 50% state of charge is a big help over the 75 amp, 75% state of charge, where it fell to a 75 amp limit, which was super limiting. That was 35 kilowatts while driving. It's like a gentle regen. This is 75 kilowatts while driving, and it's still not good enough for the super steep parts, but 75 is a lot better than 35 kilowatts. You do feel that difference. We're sitting here at 200 amps, and it's not falling any further. And you know, 600 seconds here. I kept going for a bit until I got towards the bottom. So huge difference with the 50% state of charge over the 75 state of charge as far as how much time it takes to reduce the regen. I guess it's not that much longer, a couple seconds before we have this slope, but it's at least it stays higher. We were a little bit better off than it falling to the minimum. There's one more thing though that's in this data. Oh yeah, before I go there, I also mentioned the IGBT temps. You can again see that these are reasonable 29C. So that again is not really part of the equation. But there was one more thing we had in our discussion in the forums about the various regen settings. And so I have, of course, I love my high regen, and I have it. This was taken in all-purpose standard height high regen. But if you notice here, in a couple of these graphs, you see this high regen, and then it tapers back. And so what I was doing here was toggling the regen between highest and standard, and I actually then switched to snow mode so I can get low regen. And while I do this, so people argue that this didn't make any difference, that it just acted quicker, and it does act quicker in higher regen, or I should say the response rate is quicker, the response curve is quicker, but there is definitely a difference in regen limit, and you can do this yourself without any data whatsoever. Get in a downhill, full regen, set it to highest, toggle it to standard, you'll feel it release a little bit, toggle it back to high again, and you'll feel it slow down again. But I can see that in the data here, and as I was driving along, again, I have the kilowatts in front of my face on my micro display, and it was going between, if I remember correctly, I believe 170 kilowatts, 130 kilowatts, and 90 kilowatts. And I could just repeat that over and over with the 3 different regen levels. So yeah, it's slower to regen in low, and that's great for snow mode. You want it to be more gradual, but there was a limit. So, and this data is showing that. This is where I'm actually going down the hill. Notice my pedal is not changing. It's at 100. My foot's off this pedal this whole time, and the regen goes down, and then I bring it back, and it comes back higher again. And so this is where I'm proving, like, hey, you just change it. But that's an experiment you can do yourself. So anyway, this is what I used to do even with Tesla. We'd have discussions in the forums or in Discord where people are theorizing this or that and why does this happen. And I like to pull the actual data to kind of explain what they're doing. That's why I kind of made the CANserver to begin with, so I can log that data. And why I have the micro displays in front of me, because when you have that actual data, even if it's just kilowatt hour, if it's just kilowatt values live and battery temperature live are the 2 displays I have, they're so helpful while you're driving to kind of understand what's going on instead of just wondering and complaining. So anyway, leave your comments below on this. I'll leave the forum link below as well if you want to see that discussion. So subscribe if you want to see more of these data discussions. I'll also go back to some more video reviews, and also leave a comment below or send me a note if you want me to look at any other particular thing. But usually it's kind of inspired by what we discuss in the forums. Thanks.